Hello, my name is Klaus from Montreux, Switzerland. I welcome you at the Physis Foundation with another interview of Medisophical Talks. Medisophical Talks is a series of interviews with people who are experts in their fields, where we try to raise awareness regarding the incredible change in paradigm we're currently facing in biology and medicine. And today we have an interview partner who doesn't come from biology and medicine, who comes from business. His name is Peter Sage, and Peter Sage is somebody I discovered about 6 months ago, and I was from the very beginning very impressed about his deep insights about life. He runs a business school in London, but it's not just about making money, it's about life, and that's why we wanted to have him here and to talk about his view of life and his view of human potential. And what is the human potential? That was the main question we discussed during this interview, and we hope that we're gonna learn from this interview. We're gonna learn from Peter, and I think there is a lot of wisdom Peter has shared with us, and we're very happy having had you here, Peter. Thank you very much for coming over. And let me finish with just telling you a bit more about the Physis Foundation. Physis Foundation is a non-profit organization in Montreux, Switzerland. We try to support healthcare structures in Central African Republic. That's where all of the Physis Foundation's members have lived, or at least visited, where we all have become very sick with malaria. That's why we got interested in malaria, in doing research in malaria. And the last third objective is about raising awareness. That's why we invited Peter Sage. Oh, we had big fun, Peter, doing this interview with you. Thanks a lot again for coming over. Enjoy the interview, and in case you want to learn more about Peter, have a look at his website, and if you want to learn more about our foundation, have a look at our foundation's website.
Yes, well, I mean, to begin with, thank you for the invite. You know, I see it as a real privilege of part of my journey right now to be able to meet so many amazing people that are on their journey of passion and contribution. And you know, when I heard about the work that you were doing, Klaus, and the incredible things that are happening as a result of that, I thought, you know, it would be wonderful to accept the invitation to come and hopefully between us over the next little while add some value to the people watching. And really, you know, we have very similar paths, I believe, but obviously in different fields. But there are no accidents, and everything tends to cross-pollinate is the word that I've heard recently on how to explain on where two different fields really synergize in a way to add value and become more. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to take my message to the world in the way that, you know, through entrepreneurship and business really allows the best of who people are to show up, to be able to experience life in a way that, you know, really allows them the ability to engage with life on their terms, rather than do what so many people do, which is become a victim of circumstance, or feel that their role in life is to battle forward and hopefully, you know, if the dice roll the right way, live a good life. And we weren't born, I think, to gamble. You know, we were born for far more than that, and you know, very few people have the courage to really explore that level of thinking. And whether it's in business or whether it's in the medical profession, I think it's a topic worth exploring.
I noticed you put a little word on your Skype account, which is like, you know, live the life you are born to live and to supposed to be, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, certainly. As I said, most people are born, and by the time their earliest memories are developed, they have already had imprints that set them up for a life of struggle and effort rather than a life of flow. And you know, flow has been talked about for many years in the medical profession, in the sports profession is where it's mainly focused on, but I think most people have an experience of what we mean by life flowing effortlessly in a direction where the right doors open, the right people come into your life. And I think the entire aspect can be summed up very simply in the difference between pursuit versus polarity. You know, when you come to pursuit, most people are struggling to go out in life and chase the things that they want. And certainly for myself, for many years, my experience was the harder I chased, the further they ran. And whether it's the things you want in terms of what you feel success represents for you, or the people that you're trying to attract, or whatever it may be. So pursuit is a strong expansive energy in trying to get something you don't currently have, but in a very inefficient way. It's kind of the lowest level of efficiency if you're chasing something down. Far better to have life work with you from a polarity perspective. In other words, a level of attraction. And we see this in physics all the time. You try to put two molecules together that don't want to mix versus two molecules that through chemical bonds instantly attract. One is virtually impossible and one you can't stop. Apply that at a greater level to your life and things start to get interesting. So when I say live the life you were born to live, I'm talking about why you're here. Again, we get into very philosophical levels of understanding, but I know that the reason you and I here, or anybody watching this, is not by accident. If you take the Darwinian view, where you look under a microscope and you see 400 million sperm racing towards an egg, maybe 50 or so get there. But at some point, one is chosen. We don't know why, we don't know how, there is no rhyme or reason that the left side of the brain can balance the equations to giving us an understanding of that, but there has to be a higher level of intelligence that governs it. In other words, you were chosen to be here. Now, if that were true, and you just hold it that way for a second, regardless of your belief, what would that impose on you in terms of your responsibility to live a life on purpose, rather than live a life in reaction to the big wide world out there that seems to beat me up every time I try to, go down the street towards my goals? There's an inherent level of responsibility to step up, and unfortunately many people don't embrace that. And the reason for that is the cost of awareness is responsibility to own that level of awareness and adapt or modify one's behavior in accordance with the new insight. And for many people, it's far easier to hide out. And I think the reason for that, going back to our earliest memory, is that from the age of 0 to 3, we don't really remember anything. And the reason for that is because our brains haven't even evolved to the point where we can become cynical. We don't have, we live in a different brainwave state from 0 to 6. Which is why religions will turn around and say, give me a boy for 6 or 7 years and I'll give you the man. But from that place, we're so open to being, having imprints. Our blueprint is formed in our earlier years. And unfortunately for many people, it's a blueprint of conditional love, whereby I have to modify my behavior so that I get the love, approval, respect, validation, connection from my parents or people in my life of significant influence, by doing what they believe is right versus what they believe is wrong. Because the traditional model of parenting is that I will reward good behavior and I'll punish bad behavior. Now that's only on the model of the world of the parent, but from the child's perspective, regardless of whether it's true or not, it's indifferent. Child doesn't know. It hasn't developed the cynical part of the brain to make objective comparisons. If I do this and behave this way, then I get rewarded, which is great if you want to teach somebody how to cross the road and not get run over. But if the perception of the child is, if I don't behave or tidy my room or eat my dinner or vegetables or whatever it may be, then I perceive that the love that I crave so much is withdrawn, then I modify the entire model of my construct of how I think reality should be for the rest of my life in I have to act a certain way in order to earn love. And we know in the medical profession especially, failure to thrive syndrome. If children aren't physically hugged, if they don't have the physical sensation of touch from a place of nutritive support, their immune system is compromised. Their development is stunted. Forget psychological or emotional. Their physical development will lead through to eventual death if that isn't put in place. It's nature's way of telling us that love is a far more powerful adaptogen than fear. And so from that perspective, I think living the life you were born to live goes to first understanding why you're here. It's for a bigger reason than working 40 hours a week for somebody you don't like in a job that doesn't inspire you to hopefully have some level of certainty that you can eat tomorrow. That doesn't work. and taking responsibility for the fact that you don't need to earn love. Love is the natural state. Cooperation in nature is the natural state. So therefore, if I know that I'm already good enough, then I can take all of that energy I was suppressing to try and earn love and fit in with a particular way so that people like me, and channel it into a passion where doors start to open. Long way of answering your question, but yeah, I think we covered some ground there.
I see you're talking from personal experience. I don't have the feeling that's something academic stuff you read somewhere. It's your personal experience. And I want to pick maybe two points you just touched. One is personal individual evolution, and you also touched the word responsibility. Now, in order to evolve, we make comfortable and less comfortable experiences. How was it in your case? You have no formal qualification, but you have been very successful as a businessman. So can you talk about your history and your personal evolution to come to this kind of conclusion as you just explained it?
Sure. I mean, we're all on our own journey, and everybody has a story. That's fact. Most people like to project their story as an excuse as to why they can't versus inspire other people as to why they can. But that's, again, endemic into the nature of the patterns we just discussed. But for me personally, again, I'm not a clever guy when it comes to traditional academic measurement. I didn't excel at school in math class or fractal equations or geometry or science. No, but I have a pretty good understanding of people. And in traditional education, that's the one area that really, I believe, should be taught, which isn't. What makes us relate to each other? Business is nothing more than an arena where we get to add value to each other and use a medium of exchange to measure that value that we've invented called money, which in modern society is better than trading goats and chickens. It's a universal leveler of exchange, because if I want goats and you've only got chickens, then even if you want my service, you can't pay for it. So money is simply a way of being able to level the playing field. And so business, if you recognize how do I add value to people, first you have to understand what people want and focus there. So I didn't learn that in school. So being successful in school has absolutely no correlation to being successful in business. Being successful in school means that I've essentially been conditioned on how to pass tests, work for somebody else, and follow orders. And if you get a piece of paper, whether it's a PhD, an MBA, or a high school diploma, it's essentially validating your ability to memorize information that you've been given and repeat answers. And without taking too much away from the educational side, I mean, it does teach a lot of good characteristics. How to get up in the morning, how to maintain schedule, how to essentially be open to new information. But I think the late great Jim Rohn summed it up beautifully. He said, traditional education will help make you a living, and that's questionable in today's society as well. But informal education will help make you a fortune, and that has, for me, far more resonance. So, real learning starts when you leave school. I think most people find that out. You can go to school to learn how to be a parent, but real learning starts the moment your wife gives birth.
The question about responsibility, in order that a person, an individual, really develops its individual potential, it needs responsibility. Can you talk about this point of responsibility? And what is your experience with people who are aware of this responsibility or not aware?
People have usually a binary response. And that links back to a psychological pattern, which I'll explain, which I call a circuit breaker. And in order for me to explain that, I'll start with a premise. And that premise is that, coming back to the pattern we spoke about earlier, about having to earn love, or the right to feel love, or to how to have, to be good enough in order to experience or attract what we call love, approval, validation, all the different labels that lead essentially to what we want the most. We develop an inherent fear, what I call a primary fear, that virtually every human being has, that comes from that model. And that is the fear that we're not enough. Now, that fear is so against the DNA that we're wired for, which responds to love, not fear, that we will do almost anything to avoid the awareness that I'm not enough, I'm not good enough. It drives people to do virtually everything outside of their comfort zone a lot of the time, or protect them inside their comfort zone if they feel that stepping out will trigger the fear they're not enough, i.e. fear of failure. And as a result of that, the brain develops some very interesting chemistry, some very interesting patterns that the mind ingeniously interweaves that is designed to stop us experiencing that fear. If we use a physics metaphor, if you take a battery and you wire from the positive and the negative a bulb into that circuit, and you connect that circuit, the bulb will light. Now, if you draw another wire across those two wires before the bulb, we all know what will happen. The bulb won't light. Why? Because we call it a short circuit. The reason that happens is because electricity takes the path of least resistance. Why does it do that? We don't know. We can hypothesize, but the truth is we don't understand electricity. We can understand and characterize some of its properties, but the reality is we don't know why it exists, where it comes from. We can talk about why it behaves because we're good at observing that. But the real, you transcend past that, science doesn't have answers. Now, here's an interesting point. If you talk about the path of least resistance, if I put that as a metaphor for the mind, if that bulb that we wire into the circuit is the bulb that lights, that says, I'm not good enough as an awareness, it's a very painful bulb to light. Whenever that bulb goes off, we withdraw. We avoid the fear that we're not enough, and we cover it up with all sorts of behaviors, mainly unconscious, to stop that bulb from being lit. So what the brain does, it builds in circuit breakers, it builds in wires that go across the two wires, like a switch. And as soon as I or somebody gets exposed to information that could probably light that bulb, i.e. I come up with a hypothesis or some information that challenges your model of the world. You see this in medical profession all the time. Certainly, or physics, the old Newtonian paradigms of dealing with life at just the physical level, which we now know is completely irrelevant in many different respects. But let's just say that you're a traditional doctor, and I come up with some information that we now know to be truer. And I don't say true because true with a capital T is an evolving process. It's subjective based upon information that we currently have access to. And there's information that we'll have access to in the future that'll invalidate our current truth. So one needs to be open about that. But let's say we take new information, new data, and that invalidates the hypotheses that traditional medicine or traditional equations have been built on. And I present that to you. Now, the first thing that happens is the presupposition, if my model of the world is now being threatened as a traditional doctor, that would light the bulb that I'm not good enough, or I'm not good enough, because the supposition is that my model of the world is wrong. So rather than light that bulb, we have a circuit breaker that comes across, which immediately pushes to defend my model of the world to prevent that bulb from being lit. So rather than being open to new information, I immediately invalidate the opposing hypothesis. In fact, depending on how wired I am, so that my identity is attached to my current doctrine, my 4 years in medical school is involved in the validation of my hypothesis and my model of the world, and my significance as my position in society would be threatened if this new information were true. Not only would I defend my model of the world, I would be compelled to attack yours. Not based on objective truth, not based upon the reality of the situation being open to evolving new ideas, but totally based on preventing that light bulb being lit in my awareness and unconscious, because the cost of awareness of that is the responsibility to live as if it's true, which then invalidates too much of my own personal agenda, identity, history, belief system. And that is too painful, because it would essentially mean I've got to look in the mirror and say, I'm not enough in my current place. And as a result of that, no, you're wrong, and here's why. And then we get into an argument, a debate, and it's pointless.
Yeah. Well, this whole scenarios you're describing, prevent us finally from developing our own potential. Because it's about mindsets, different mindsets according to different paradigms, and finally it prevents us from really connecting to our true us and our true potential. You're running a business school in London, and you're teaching people skills to develop their potentials, and you must touch all these things you're just explaining here in order to give them a theoretical framework to intellectualize and to understand. But what are the skills you are teaching at business school in order to develop the participants' potentials?
Well, there's an interesting distinction here between skills and awareness. Now, you can learn all the skills you need to run a successful business these days for free on Google, on YouTube. Siri will tell you how to run a business these days. I mean, that's the level of life we've evolved to. In other words, information is so freely and widely available right now that you don't need to pay for it. However, information does not guarantee transformation. And most people are looking for transformation and are running down the information road trying to get to that destination and wondering why they get confused and lost. So transformation is different. Transformation is based upon a shift in contextual awareness, not theoretical, not hypothetical, and certainly not conjecture or intellectualized. No. So the business school that I teach is 3 days, and the first day, I don't teach any skills. I don't talk about business. I don't talk about anything related to the traditional aspects of business because people don't need more skills. If you learn new sets of skills without shifting your level of awareness, then you'll simply find different ways of earning the same amount of money. You'll find different skills to address the same problems that keep cropping up in your life. So one has to shift the awareness. So on day one, we fundamentally reinvent who you are in relationship to your current life, whether it's your relationship to money, which most people have a very dysfunctional relationship with money. For a start, they link their self-worth and their net worth together, which is a hamster wheel to disaster. Your relationship to yourself, your relationship to the unconscious patterns that you run that nobody's teaching you how to solve or even be aware of. So you're running down blind alleys. And so how do we repattern your psychology and allow you the tools to essentially reinvent yourself in relation to all of these different aspects and business and life and relationships, and your primary fears and your truths for you and all of that stuff. So that's day one. After that, and we've shifted who you are, then we can start teaching you business. Then we can start getting into the mechanics of starting up companies with no money and understanding how to shift your relationship with time management and teaching you sales and marketing processes and how to evolve in today's competitive society so that you're always on top. That's fine. That's day 2 and 3. But without day 1, without reinventing who you are, it's like, as I say, it's like having a car as a vehicle. The business, you can put different wheels on that car. You can change the color. You can adjust the seats, but it's the driver of the car that creates the experience. You take a Formula 1 driver and put him in your car, it's going to be a very different experience because he's developed himself in relation to that vehicle. But if you're sitting there with no driving license, complaining that the ride in the car isn't that good, and you think by solving it you should get a different car, that's not going to work. And that's how so many people are in life. Oh, give me more skills, give me a different car, rather than changing the driver of that car and upgrading that level of awareness and internal skill set, if you like.
Well, that's a deeply personal, or these are deep personal issues you're finally addressing at day 1. And I mean, I wonder to which point people really follow you and allow themselves to meet themselves in order to discover their potential. There must be some resistance in some cases. Some are more open, and some are more prepared, and some are more willing to meet themselves. It's about introspection and capacity to look at oneself.
Again, come back to the cost of awareness is responsibility. However, for 3 days, I have you in the room. And I design a program that guides people through that. Some people need help. Some people don't need an invitation. Some people will run forward to that because they're so, in so much pain of where they currently are. They're happy to jump out. Some people are very resistant. but I design a process over that first day, 12 hours, and you're going to experience this because I know you're coming to the next business school, so it'd be interesting to do a little take on your view after that.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward, this idea of Medisophical Talks is actually it's about human potential. We, our foundation, we try to support a transformation process on different levels. First of all in the medical field, but it's also beyond the medical field, and that's why we got in touch with you, because we discovered with you a person who's in the first place not medical, but in the second place medical as well, because when you're working with people, you see people suffering with their patterns they have, they are following all their lives, and then when you come to you, at some point you break them up, you redefine them. So can you tell us a bit about the suffering and the potential of suffering and the need in order to transform? There's a certain need, in my opinion, to experience pain, otherwise we don't change, we don't transform.
Of course. And there's healthy challenge and there's unhealthy challenge. Yeah, and so if we come back to the premise here that there's many different people come through my courses, and there's I've done this around the world for enough years to see just about everything that you could possibly see, and we're all made of the same stuff. I don't care your cultural, religious, spiritual beliefs, background, story, all of that stuff. I know how you feel when you feel happy because I know how I feel when I feel happy. And how you feel when you feel stressed because I know how I feel when I feel stressed. We're made of the same stuff. There's only so many patterns of human behavior that that exist and are very common. So luckily, it's not because I understand or have taken a 5-year diploma in understanding dynamic psychotherapy. Thankfully, I never suffered the disadvantage of college or university. Right now, I understand the basic principles between all of the different major mainstream aspects because I wanted to find out why they didn't work. Dynamic psychotherapy, cognitive therapy, Gestalt, humanistic therapy, NLP, all of these different branches have various aspects to them. Sometimes work, sometimes don't. And I wanted to transcend that. I wanted to find out, what's beneath that? What are the organizing principles? And it's really at that level that I started to create most of the work that I do. And it's not as complicated as most people like to make it so they can charge more money for the service. That's another pattern. But when it comes to understanding the issues that surround people, let's take health as an example. We're in such an exciting time in history right now of advanced levels of understanding that day to day the game is changing. Now, health is one of my passions. Another reason I was really keen to meet with you, Klaus, because we have so much in common in our desire to help people. And health is, I teach a year-long program called the Master Circle, and part of one of the pillars of that is health and vitality. And I don't just think health because we're born with health. Health is simply the absence of disease. But very few people that have the absence of disease have that vitality to be able to enjoy life and have that spark, that passion to go out and grab life, by the hands and dance in a way that is satisfying rather than the struggle and effort. And so, we have healthy challenge and unhealthy challenge. Muscles are designed to grow if you challenge them in the gym. And now, that is healthy stress. What I love about this physical body we've been given, rent-free, is the fact that if you challenge it beyond its comfort zone, it will always return with a better version of itself. It is a 24/7 adaptation machine. Now, the challenge with that is it doesn't care which environment it adapts to. You put it in McDonald's, it will adapt. You put it in the gym, it will adapt. It doesn't get, it's indifferent to the nature of the input. Our responsibility is to choose a more beneficial environment for it to adapt to, but that's what we're always doing. The mind is the same. It's a 24/7 adaptation machine. You hear it all day long. You become who you hang with. Your environment is what creates the stimulus. Now, in the medical profession, again, we will take a fetus in the womb, and depending on the biochemical and energetic signals that the mother is giving to that fetus will affect the development of that fetus. If it's in a fear, stress-based environment, that fetus will develop less of the prefrontal cortex, and it'll develop more of the mammalian brain and the reptilian brain, and have more focus on muscular development because it thinks it's got to get out and start fighting in a world that's stressful. If the mother is going through their pregnancy and is exposed to an environment that is loving, that is harmonious, that is far more less threatening, that child will develop in the womb far more cognitive processing in order to be able to analyze and intellectualize and be able to evolve more mentally rather than physically into the environment it's born into. We are constantly adapting to our environment. And many doctors aren't even aware of the latest understanding in this because they're too busy protecting their original dogma, and I use that word specifically, around the model of the world. So if you come to understanding health, physical health is the lowest benchmark of what most people are hypnotically put into to focus on. If you take the whole Human Genome Project, for example, I mean, that was such a delusional project in the eyes of the public because the public were convinced it was a humanitarian project when it wasn't. It actually had a strong commercial bias. It was commercially driven because insurance companies and medical companies and drug companies thought, oh wow, if we believe the age-old dogma that's been prevalent for 40 years and which most of medical science is based on, that genes control reality, then if we get to understand genes, we can make different drugs that will affect that. We can essentially own you at every level. And not only did this give a deterministic approach which allowed people to think they were victims of their genes, but it was a real blind side for so much of the medical community. And fortunately, what we now know as absolute scientific fact is that our genes don't control our reality. The whole science of epigenetics, which is so exciting, demonstrates clearly that our mind and our thoughts in relation to the perception of our environment have way more influence on our genes and DNA and cellular function than virtually anything else. In fact, if you want to see one of the pioneers in this field, and a guy I'm a great fan of, is Dr. Bruce Lipton. If you go and study Bruce's work, I mean, he's another great example of somebody who the cost of awareness is responsibility, and he stood out against the medical field from 40 years ago. And was ridiculed and was, and we can go through history and show people that have changed history to be exactly the same. In fact, I say, if you want to go 90 miles an hour to nowhere, follow the crowd. And certainly with the Genome Project, that was a complete misnomer. And so, if you've been told that, it's in your genes, where do you go with that? You've got nowhere to go. Oh, therefore I'm a victim. Therefore I didn't win the genetic lottery. Therefore I'm going to spend the rest of my life not knowing that I'm so empowered to be able to change my circumstances physically. And medical science knows this. They willfully ignore the biggest red flag that's waving at them in the face, called the placebo effect. And if people understood that, no, your belief around your mental and emotional and vibrational energetic state around your relationship to health has way, way more power over whatever it is that you think the physical level of you taking a pill. You want evidence of that? Go do your research. The #1 best-selling antidepressant on the market right now outperformed the placebo in clinical trials by 2%. 2%. In other words, right, you have a 2% more effective result taking the top-selling antidepressant, which I won't name on camera for fear of you getting some reprisal, but it's not hard to figure it out, versus a sugar pill or something made of chalk or magnesium stearate. I mean, give me a break. And oh no, spontaneous remission is an anomaly. We can't put it down to anything. It's because you're focusing at the physical level, the lowest level of vibration you can get. And don't get me wrong, medical science has done incredible things for our journey of awareness. But to stand and slam the door on anything and stand on a pedestal and saying, right, this is now the truth provider, when 200 years ago it was leeches that could cure anything, and now it's pharmaceuticals, which is the leading cause of death in the Western world. Again, go do your research. The #1 leading cause of death, ahead of cancer, ahead of heart disease, is correctly prescribed pharmaceutical drugs. Again, don't say it, go do your research. And you'll be shocked at the level of programming that we've been given because we've taken on authority somebody that wore a white coat, that 40 years ago told us to smoke to deal with stress, and has a lower, on average, life expectancy than the average person who's not a doctor.
Well, Peter, I agree with what you say. I think it's, I want to just say a word regarding drugs. I think actually drugs, in fact, not just creating disease or new disease, modify disease, and to some point even are killing. I mean, I know from my personal experience being responsible for a house for elderly people where we reduce drugs, where they come in with lots of different drugs, and then I know over the time we reduce and we see that they feel better, they don't need them, they are less susceptible to have infections, they have less accidents, and they even die in a different way. Now this I think is a big issue. I think it's not just that drugs actually have an impact on our health. They have an impact on our potential. Of course, I mean, if it has an impact on our health, it has an impact on our potential, and it prevents developing our potential. And the whole idea of treating people with the Western concept is getting particularly difficult in another cultural context, like in Africa, for instance, where people don't have the same mindset or training as doctors have. Now, coming back to human potential, well, you are actually, what we just said is the lowest vibration of human existence is on the physical level. Can you elaborate a bit on different levels of vibration? You just mentioned the physical level.
Yeah, and I'll keep this fairly simple for everybody here, because I'm a pretty simple guy. So, we can get lost into philosophical concepts, and the challenge over the last, certainly a couple of hundred years has been that the previous truth provider was always religion, and religion dealt with the metaphysical, it dealt with the invisible, and that way it could defend itself against validation. Cox postulates don't stack up in religion. Whereas when science came along, science dealt exclusively with the physical and ignored the metaphysical, and therefore you set up a lifelong battle between science and religion, or physical and metaphysical. And the challenge is that they're both just different ways of telling the same story. What we're now finding out, from 1927, when Albert Einstein and the greats, Niels Bohr and or Max Planck and all of the great pioneers of quantum physics started to understand that, whoa, hang on a minute, this non-physical aspect of life, there's something to it. And from that awareness, human potential exploded. From the life that we see today is only made possible based upon the allowance of what quantum physics has given us in terms of understanding and knowledge, whether it's computers, whether it's understanding gravity. There's so much it's brought to the table. However, medical profession at the moment is still very steeped in a pre-1927 dealing with just physical reality, and physical is the lowest level. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not here to slag off the medical profession in the certain level that it does immense wonders, and a lot of doctors passionately get involved in the medical community because they're passionate about wanting to serve and help and contribute, and that I fully endorse. However, and if I have a car accident and I'm in need of, and I have trauma and I'm in need of immediate physical assistance, medical drugs, medical procedures are by far the number one choice. At that point, you're not going to meditate your way into a healthy environment. That doesn't work. So the physical aspect has a role to play in treating the immediacy of physical trauma. However, again, I don't think there's a credible doctor, and I use the word credible not based upon what certificate they've got on the wall or what medical school they went to. I use the word credible in terms of being open to new information that is currently available in medical science, that is being pioneered by the new generation that don't have that sense of protection against an identity that has been indoctrinated over 40 years of misinformation. So credible doctors right now are starting to understand that 90+% of all medical conditions are as a result of metaphysical causes, things like stress. Where does stress come from? Stress comes from you not being happy with the fact that the outer world doesn't fit the pictures of what the inner world says it should look like. Well, who got to vote on that? We did. That's our decision. So if you understand that the base level is physical, the next level is mental and emotional. Again, placebo effect in full display, neon lights. Oh no, we'll ignore that. Right? So, and again, if you do look at the research that's been done, a great documentary that was put out in terms of where they calibrated people's belief system around the severity of the intervention correlated to the effectiveness of the intervention. So somebody had knee problems and they were given a pill, and a certain percentage of people recovered, even though it was a sugar pill. A higher percentage were given an injection, saline solution, but were told that it was a new drug that was very powerful at treating knee problems, and a higher percentage responded to that. And then certain people were taken and given surgery, but it was a sham surgery. They were put under a general anesthetic. They were cut just enough to be able to stitch it back up, and they were told that the surgery was very successful. Every single one of those recovered fully, even though the surgery was sham. Now, one of the biggest things that came out of that was listening to the surgeon afterwards that performed this procedure. And he was distraught because his identity had just been challenged, but he was humble enough to turn around and say, whoa, all these years in medical school, all these procedures that I performed, that I thought I was the person that was being, making the difference. And I wasn't. My surgeries didn't count for anything. The patient's belief system around what the surgery was doing was the predominant and dominant factor, mental, emotional. And we see this all the time. Spontaneous remission is just one example where you match the frequency of health to the individual, which hasn't been there because the blocks have been put in through stress, through not thinking that the outer world fits my pictures, through thinking I have to earn love, and all the rest of it. Then we move up to the highest level, energetic. Now, what is energy? Energy it's a label that the mind, the left side of the brain will come up with to try and put onto something that is the only thing we can try to really understand. Energy is information. Energy itself is a level of information exchange. It's a vibrational exchange. Does metaphysical energy work? Well, of course. There's more energy in one atom that you can destroy a city with than there is in a can of energy drink that you buy off the shelf. So if you're dealing at the physical level versus the metaphysical level. If you're watching this right now on a television or a computer that's powered by a nuclear power station, you're watching this courtesy of metaphysical energy. So if you start to understand that at the highest level, energy, the energetic realm, energy healing, absolutely dismissed in the medical profession that's focusing at the physical level. Absolutely true to the people that understand the metaphysical level. So if you take the simplest way of putting this, and I'm just going to sum this up for people, for healing to occur at the physical level, if you're trying to solve a physical problem that was caused at the metaphysical level, you're wasting your time. You're going to address symptoms. It will reoccur. Now, in order to heal, in order for the body to heal, love has to flow. Not saline solution, not a cocktail of chemotherapy, which is a DNA chain terminator that kills more people than cancer, in my opinion. But love. If you have or speak to anybody that's engaged in spontaneous remission and interview them, there is a tipping point that you will find consistent amongst everybody. And that is the point they surrendered. What does surrender look like? Well, to a low level of consciousness, surrender is I give up. I submit to a higher power that's imposing its will on me that I don't want. And therefore, most people at a low level of conscious resist the word surrender because it means more of the same suppression. You try to get a Marine to surrender, and that's not going to happen. No, it means giving into a more dominant force. But if you raise your level of consciousness, you raise your level of understanding, the word surrender really comes down to surrendering to a higher level of wisdom, to a higher power that loves you, that was born here, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So imagine life as a current in the river. You can fight the current, and it's possible, and many people spend their life doing it. You can swim upstream. It's exhausting. I did it for many years. and I got psoriasis, and I got stress, and I got or burnout and adrenal fatigue and all the usual stuff that goes with increased stress levels. As my body's trying to tell me, hey, dummy, the river of life flows in a particular direction for a reason. Surrender to the wisdom of the current. And then my left brain kicks in and says, I want to go in a straight line towards my goals, because I was taught at school in a left brain educational system that the fastest way from A to B is a straight line. And then we chunk up and say, well, actually, no, it's not. It never has been. It never will be. The fastest way from A to B, if you want to think it's a straight line, open your front door and try to walk to your office in a straight line. Right? It's not going to happen. Try to drive to work in a straight line. You're going to have a sad-looking car within 50 yards. Yeah? No, we know it's counterintuitive. We've got to go down the street, we've got to turn left, we've got to head south on the freeway to come off to head north towards the office. Yeah? That's the fastest, most effective, efficient way of getting to the office. But in a trained left brain, institutionalized mindset, no, we want a straight line. So I'm stressed. If I can't see the road to my goal, then I get stressed. I try to fix the world according to my pictures to make it happen. Whereas if I surrender to the wisdom of the current, every river winds. It's the primary pattern of life. Why? It's the wave, not the particle. Even every particle vibrates at an oscillation. Yeah, it is the primary pattern of life is the wave. There is an up, there is a down. There is a left field, a right field. It's not going to go in a straight line. So the river winds. Every river looks the same from the earth, from above, regardless of topography or gravity. Oh no, it just finds the easiest way downhill. No, a river that's straight winds consistently. Right? So that's on straight ground. So for me, if I understand bringing it back to health and vibration and energy, if I start to understand that if I surrender to the wisdom of the current, and even though I may be freaking out that it's turning around and going left, and I thought my goal is straight ahead, that it's probably going to catapult me round towards my goal faster because of this bend. Or if I had the foresight to elevate my consciousness to look 500 yards above the river down, and I notice that my destination downstream is still there, I don't care how the river winds. I know where I'm going. I'm on the right river. You're born into physicality. Your body is born in the right river. You don't have to tell your blood how to flow. You don't have to tell your heart how to beat. You don't have to tell your finger how to heal. The wisdom of the current is there. So if you were to surrender to the inevitability of that happening and let go of what it was that you were resisting, you can start to flow. And that's where spontaneous remission starts to happen. That's where love becomes the natural state. And unfortunately, we call it the rumble strip. If you're driving down the freeway and you start to drift off or lose concentration, you veer to one side or the other, there is a rumble strip that is designed to wake you up. Disease is your rumble strip. It's there for a purpose. When was the last time, I say this to people, when was the last time you made friends with your disease? What do you mean? I'm resisting it, I'm fighting it. Well, dummy, that's what caused it in the first place. Now, if you're fighting your disease, you're engaged in active resistance, stress. You're swimming upstream to try to get away from the bend that's coming up that you perceive as a threat. Yeah, your disease appeared because you're the rumble strip. Now, it may be that rumble strip was you spent too much time in McDonald's rather than the gym. It may be that rumble strip is telling you to let go of the hate that you have for the people in your life rather than embrace a level of forgiveness. There's many different messages that rumble strip is there to provide. But as soon as we start chunking up and understanding that the wisdom of the current is teaching us ultimately to bring back into the center of the road, which is the central road which leads to love, then healing can occur.
So you're saying that, and I absolutely agree, that actually disease is an awareness-raising opportunity.
Of course.
And that we should see what is behind, so it has the potential to put us back to another track in order to feel healthy and to develop our potential.
90+% of the time. Now, there's certain issues that environmental issues that can play a role. For example, if I'm next to Chernobyl, then I'm going to have some physiological reaction to that is going to have a radiation trauma or pollution or what have you. There's certain external environments, but vast majority of ailments are caused from your internal environment at a mental, emotional, or energetic level. Yeah, the cancer cloud doesn't come along and rain on you. Right? That is Disneyland thinking. The reason you attracted cancer at that point was the rumble strip. And most people driving through life, listening to their music are great. And all of a sudden, brrr, oh my God, what's happening? I've got cancer. What do? Yeah, they feel resentful because it's interrupting their music. They can't listen to their music on the radio. So what do? They turn the radio up. Right? I'll just ignore the message. Yeah, or I'll fight the message by putting this louder than that. No, understand it's there for a reason. It's your friend. And once you can align energetically with it and go and ask it the conversation, what are you trying to tell me? Yeah, I surrender to the wisdom of something smaller. What are you trying to tell me? I'm trying to tell you that you should really pick up the phone to your parents that you've not spoke to for 6 months and have a conversation about why you don't need to be right anymore. Or many different ways that could manifest.
To come back to this metaphor with the river and to trust and to surrender a flow state we can put ourselves that's what life is about, actually, to discover that and to have the faith that actually I need not to understand with my mind because we're not going very far with the mind, but to trust and to have faith to something beyond the mind. Well, that needs some experience, doesn't it? I mean, that's about
absolutely.
That's about the journey.
Absolutely. And again, it's not about it being sunny all the time. It's not about just flowing with the river and hoping the river's going to take us to where we want to go. That's the esoteric side, which has been rightly challenged by the scientific community. Oh, just let go and let God and trust in life and everything will follow. Great. And then you wonder why somebody comes and takes your furniture. Right, that doesn't work. But one has to understand the marriage here. We are physical and metaphysical beings in a perfect encapsulation. There's a lot that's metaphysical about us. We experience it every night when we dream. Right? Dreams are real because we experience them, but can you put them in a bottle and sell them in Walmart? No, you can't. Right? Physical, metaphysical. But we have, we are a perfect example of that. So we have to understand that we're here in both capacities. Now, the flow of the river is the metaphysical current that takes us to where we want to go. But if I just jump in the river like a cork bobbing up and down and hope that I'm not going to hit the bank or crash on the rocks or get caught up in a whirlpool, that's not going to work. I have to be a good sailor. Learning how to sail in the river of life. And therefore we need skill sets. We need, it's like the muscles. We need to go to the gym to work hard to build the muscle. Otherwise the muscle isn't going to grow. There are certain we're not here just to enjoy nirvana and hope everything falls in our plate. No. Where do the strongest trees grow? It's not the best soil, it's the strongest winds. So pray for strong winds and then don't bitch about them when they show up. Right? Life is going to put you in the river and you're going to have to learn to sail or swim. And as soon as you learn how to swim, it's going to put a weight belt on you. And you're going to struggle for a bit. And as soon as you master that, it'll put more weight on. That's the nature of growth in life.
That reminds what we... I think it's Jesus who says, love your enemies, because that's the winds, right?
There's so much wisdom in the Bible, and again, I don't want to turn this into too much of a philosophical talk around religion because, unfortunately, we see so many people at a level of consciousness that defend their model of the world around religion that causes way much more pain, hurt, and suffering than any of the religious instigators of those messages, I think, ever had a connection to. I don't think Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, Krishna ever really said we're going to have to go to war and kill people in order for them to believe what it is. That's not the message. Christianity, and again, just come back to religion as why do people believe what they believe? In terms of religion, it's very simple. They've been told to. That's it. The only reason you believe what you believe in your religion is because you were told to by people that had a significant level of impressionability at an age where you bought into that looking for certainty. And therefore we now run the circuit breaker of defending that and it causes all the kinds of problems that we have. If you grew up never hearing of Islam or Christianity or any of the other offshoots of Judeo-Christian faith or any of the other different religions or sects, you wouldn't believe that. You would have an inherent level of truth that connects to the primary current, which is love, which is how to grow and contribute rather than take out of the system, which is, again, the principles nature operates by. And, if you look at the high levels of understanding around spirituality and religion, that's what they were teaching. But it can only be interpreted from the level of consciousness or awareness that you're at. It's like trying to explain social economics to a 3-year-old. No, they're not going to get it. Not from the place that the professor's trying to teach it at. You know, they can probably understand the difference between 1 and 2 ice creams, but you know, you're not going to be able to let them lead a class at that level.
You know, our foundation, the Physis Foundation, is entirely non-religious, and all the members are very spiritual, and we believe that, and on this we experience the metaphysical part of our existence. And when you just mentioned the winds, or whatever kind of label we want to give it, it's about challenges. We need the challenges in life to build this trust and confidence as an inner reference in us, in order to allow to follow the flow and to trust the higher wisdom and intelligence which is there to develop our full potential. That's basically the way I understood you. That's what you're saying.
Understood.
Yeah.
And again, you go to the gym and you struggle lifting 20 kilos, that's great, but at some point your body's going to adapt and 20 kilos will be easy. You don't then stay on 20 kilos for the next 2 years. I think, oh, now I've made it. No, you add more weight. Life is going to continue to add more weight so that we can grow. And we shouldn't resist that. We want to become good sailors. And the challenge is when the mind tries to influence the current itself rather than our relationship to the current. Oh, I hate life. I'm going to grab life by the horns and try and make it fix my pictures. Well, good luck with that. I spent many years fighting reality only to come to the conclusion that I should give up, because every time I do it, it kept winning. And then I started learning to position myself in relation to the current, and the river started to take me where I wanted to go. Very interesting. What am I here to learn? Now, as soon as I resist everything, then, and I start fighting it rather than flowing with it, so I understand the messages, you resist the rumble strip, you're going to go crashing off the side into the verge or the central reservation. You start to understand it's there to teach you a lesson or give you a message or bring you back into the center of the road. You start to flow a little more with the current. Your relationship to it, not it. You're not going to change the rumble strip. Most people try to get out and try and smooth it out. Waste of time and energy. Nature doesn't waste energy in vain. Right? There's always a smarter way, and if we start tuning into that.
I've got a question, Peter. These inner changes or the ability to adapt and to develop finally tools and to cope with the outer stress because it doesn't fit to the inner picture of the worldview we have of the outer world. I mean, this kind of evolution happens very differently in each of us, but still we have certain universal values, I believe. Like love itself is such a it's not value, it's more than that. I don't find the word, but to be honest, for instance, not to tell the truth, to be respectful with other people, to be respectful with ourselves, to honor the way other people are. There's certain values I think people finally integrate in their inner existence and become kind of reference they can rely on and build on it. So how was it in your case? I mean, you were just saying that you were struggling with the outer world for many years and finally you realized, I won't win.
Well, I think you raise a bigger point actually, which I'd like to just touch on if you don't mind. And that is that everything in our perception is subjective. Even the objective world, we can only experience it through our subjective nature. So when you say everyone has values and everyone should be honest, but what is honest? Honest to one person is different to what honest is something. We can only project our own model of the world. That's all anyone could ever do. Don't expect a dog to meow. Right? Don't expect a cat to bark. Right? You have to understand that everybody is experiencing reality and through their own filters. And what's right for somebody is not right for somebody else. It's totally subjective. We fall under the illusion that the outer world is real. Science will tell you it isn't. We know this isn't real. If I was to tell you to go into this chair, for example, and go right at the smallest level, right at the atomic level, and fly around the atom inside and take pictures of it, what would you see? Nothing. There's nothing there. There is no nucleus. There is no electron that has a form. That's old Newtonian paradigm science that we now know not to be true with modern technology and physics, that if you can get off your previous indoctrination, people can be open to understanding. It is an energy vortex that is held together through forces we don't understand. Be okay with that. That has sort of compiled this experience called a body, an experience called an outer world. There's many different aspects to what has been commonly known now as the simulation hypothesis. And there's a lot to be said for that. But when you come to understanding what reality is, all we can do as human beings is experience what we perceive to be reality. In fact, I'll go one further. The only thing a human being can do is to experience experiencing. So when we come back to that level of fundamental awareness, what is right and what is wrong? We can only say what is right and wrong for us, because everybody does things for reasons that are in accordance with their own sense of identity, values and rules. Just because it doesn't fit my pictures or your pictures, we don't really have much of a right to impose on that. They're on their journey, and it may not be this lifetime. We can invite to educate, but the second you judge somebody, you lose all ability to influence them, and you lose all ability to learn from them. And a lot of the time, the things that happen in our outer world and our experience of that we then tend to resist, is nothing more than what we created in order to learn something to move forward. At the point my muscles are screaming in the gym because I'm on my 11th rep when I thought I could do 9, if you were to ask my muscle fiber how it's feeling that day, it'll probably swear at me. But from a higher level of consciousness, I'm happy to do it because I see the bigger picture of the growth. Most of us are muscle fibers on the 11th rep complaining at the world, rather than understand from a bigger picture that whatever lessons I'm attracting are required in order for me to grow, to become the person I was born to be, to add value, to live the mission I was born to live, to contribute something better and bigger than myself.
So, I agree, and I think you explained it very well, that actually, finally, things are all remain on a subjective level. Now, still, we are a human community. We should, I think, have certain ways to treat each other, and respect for the way the other one is such a value. But what you're finally discussing here is questioning our culture, the way we are as a culture. And the world is changing. I actually believe we are developing a global community with global culture. So where are we going as a community in a world where we're far away of having a sustainable lifestyle? So we are discussing deep issues here. How do you, in your perception, your ideas, need to live together in order to develop a community, a sustainable community, and to develop human potential?
Yeah, beautiful question. And we only have to go to nature to understand the answer. And again, nature is a label. Call it what you will. Call it God, call it evolution, call it spirituality, divine presence. I don't buy into arguing over labels because it's pointless. But we can't deny the inherent intelligence that set up this system that we call our current reality. In fact, Einstein's my most favorite question, or favorite statement that he says, the most important question that a man can ask in his lifetime is this: do we or do we not live in a just universe? In other words, are we some sort of random mutation according to pre-1927 science? An evolution in a Darwinian mode, which we now know and always did in our heart wasn't right? Or is this experience that we've created in terms of reality that we're experiencing something majestic, something beautiful, something that at every level is perfectly designed to support the emergence and beauty of life, rather than the toxicity and sort of suppression of life? So go to nature. Nature operates on two laws fundamentally: growth and contribution. And those are fused through cooperation. Look at the human body. What is the human body? it is a skin-covered Petri dish of 50 trillion plus cells. Again, this is classic Bruce Lipton 101. Yeah, every single cell in the body operates independently on its own sense of self in community and harmony with 50 trillion other cells. And every single cell is a microcosm of a human being. It's a sentient being. It has its own level of awareness. Yeah, it has a reproductive system. It has a waste system. It has a brain. It has a energy generation and processing system. Yeah, it's paid in the community of the body, in the economy of the body, yeah, with energy, and it spends that energy, and just like we do with money. So you have 50 trillion cells working in harmony. I think we can figure out 7 billion people working in harmony if we follow that same principle of cooperation. Now the challenge becomes when we become egocentric, focused on ourselves as an individual, in separation, or the illusion of separation, to the other 7 billion people or 50 trillion cells. And a great analogy here would be that you have a white blood cell running around the body, and it says, you know something, I'm just going to do my own thing. Yeah, I'm going to play by my agenda. Yeah, I don't want to run around the bloodstream gobbling up, bacteria and dumping it into the lymph. Yeah, no, I'm through with that. I'm going to go off and see the lungs. I want to travel the world, see the lungs. Let's go off, right? You wouldn't have that. If you did, if a cell started operating independent of the community benefit, we call that cancer. Now all of a sudden, the cell has no respect for the organism that supports the life of the cell. Now you chunk that up to 50 trillion cells as one cell, as a human body, and we start acting out of accordance with the cooperation of the community that our cells live in, or bodies live in, called planet Earth. And all of a sudden we start focusing egocentric. I'm going to do my own thing. I don't care if that rainforest gets cut down as long as I have my oak table, right? Or my mahogany chair. No, I'm going to ignore that fact because it's about me. We start focusing at that level, and I've got news for you. We're in a cancerous society in many respects. Now, the good news with cancer is it's the rumble strip. It's waking us up. And unfortunately, nature's smarter than us. If a third of the human population has to disappear before we wake up, nature will tell us that. And if me as one little cell in that has to be part of that to go, then I'll go. Yeah, if that's the case, that's the case. I'll be regenerated as a cell in whatever next body or game that we go, and I'll go play that role. And hopefully, my level of awareness will be on a journey of self-discovery that I can be able to grow and contribute, just like you are with things like this, to the awareness of other people. Yeah, and everyone has a philosophy around it. But for me, that kind of makes sense.
It reminded me to what you say on one of your podcasts. That Peter has a fantastic website with incredible podcasts, lots of good information. I recommend everybody to have a look at it. A lot I could learn. I hope a lot other people will learn. And you're talking about leadership. We're jumping a bit from one issue to another, but they're all interconnected. And when you talk about leadership, one of the parameters you're discussing is about be ethnocentric and don't be egocentric.
Mm-hmm.
And we really try to integrate that here at the Foundation's place, at my daily work. And I find actually when I listen to the other parameters, when you say leaders go first and so on, I mean it's actually it counts for everybody. Mm-hmm. It's not just for the leaders in enterprises. Basically, these are parameters which have its place for every human being.
Absolutely, 100%. And again, in the medical community, you do far more good teaching people to be responsible for their own health rather than play the big man on campus that can fix health problems once they go wrong. Again, egocentric versus ethnocentric. And again, leadership is about creating more leaders, not boasting how many followers you have. I believe the goal of every teacher should be for their students to excel them. Everything other than that is ego. Yeah, and you see it in leaders in business now, people like Elon Musk, who are giving away his proprietary technology to the world. Go use it. Yeah, the cooperation is the new competition. And if we can start to understand that, we can thrive in this world where we've got more than enough land mass to grow more than enough food to feed more than enough people. We've got more than enough technology to sustain life at a level that is supportive rather than destructive. And we don't have to come to terms with the fact that we're now facing the sixth mass extinction in our history, which if we have to be taken out of the game to make room and the next generation of humans of 2 million years from now get it right, then we'll have served a purpose. We will be their rumble strip. Yeah, and if that's the case, that's the case. My role here, as I say to people, is nothing more than to hopefully hold up a mirror to show people their greatness, to show people their own potential. I don't want to have all the answers. I'm not smart enough for that. All I can do is be an example of somebody living their truth, which hopefully now is what I'm doing in terms of trying to share my message, to maybe just light a little spark in somebody to ask better questions or question some of the destructive belief systems they may have had up to this point that have really been causing them to swim upstream rather than to start flowing with life.
Can we just talk a little bit more about the global transformation process we find ourselves currently, where parts of the world shifted already from a traditional society towards a modern society, parts of the world that's still very traditional, and we are living in a period, in an age where we, I have the feeling, are permanently reorientating ourselves as a human being, but as a global community as well. So where do you believe where we are heading to, and what do we need actually to develop a coordinated, symbiotic global society?
The utopia of modern times. I believe part of the systemic problem is generational. We have a generation of scientists, a generation of doctors, a generation of people that are no longer pioneers. They were pioneers in their day, but now, for the reasons we gave right at the beginning of this talk, are more vested, many of them unfortunately, in protecting their own model of the world so it doesn't trip the fear that they're not enough. And that takes new generations. And now, unfortunately, you see many ecosystems, especially in Africa, which are fire-driven. And every 10 years, every 20 years, fire ravages a certain place, community, prairie, savanna, in order to make good the next generation of growth. And it's expected, in fact, it's evolved to do that. And it doesn't feel good when it's burning, especially if you're an old tree, but it's necessary for growth. I think that at this point it's generational. There is an old generation that, and if fire is old age and they die out to make room for new, then fair enough. We're very fortunate right now because of technology that we're not limited to indoctrination on education. It used to be that your education, if you were lucky enough to have access to it, was given based upon the wise men of the village, the institutions at that time that were revered because it was, again, compared to non-education was holier than thou. And that at that particular point was the source of reference. So your level of consciousness could only raise a small amount based upon the limited paradigm that you had access to new information for. Right now we have global interconnectivity. Now, the downside to that is that a vast majority of the information put into that community is completely useless. It's designed for entertaining, or people as a voice piece to now feel significant about expunging their views, at whatever level they need to be validated by because other people agree with them. But if you are really seeking how to raise your own level of awareness, how to really help the global community, you now have access to information that isn't limited by the priests or scholars of your village. And I believe that if we start getting off the need to be driven by the good opinion of other people, that whole I need to earn love. No, you're watching this right now, listen to me. No matter how much you screw up, no matter what happens or what you did or didn't do in the past, you will always be worthy of love. You'll always be good enough. The people in your life that care will care. And if they don't, it's only because they're usually dealing with their own issues and insecurities. Cut them some slack and love them for it. And so if we can understand that we now have responsibility to go and seek information that resonates here, not that balances on a spreadsheet, not that's signed off by somebody that's got 3 PhDs, that resonates here. Not on a feel-good, happy, biochemical, dopamine-driven high of, oh, it makes me feel good. No, there's a deeper sense of knowing. We're all individually born with a compass, our feeling center, our intuitive center, that is inherent with the level of intelligence that governs this thing we're experiencing called life. Learning how to listen to that, not the indoctrinated left brain that was put through a school system that's designed to validate your memory on how many tests you can pass by remembering the right answers. No. But an inner sense of knowing. We've all got it. Call it intuition. Call it gut feel. It doesn't matter. You can look throughout human history and see this time and again. It doesn't make sense, the right answers, hopefully. Then you'll know that it's not the left brain in charge, but a deeper sense of understanding and wisdom that we can only live in awe of, but life will flow in the river if we choose to follow.
Let's talk a bit more about the heart. The heart is a source which guides us. We can trust to, we can rely to, we have faith to. Differently operating to the mind, which tries to understand and to intellectualize. In your life, in your daily life, how would you compare, let's say, the space taken by the heart in your daily life and the intellect?
Well, it's huge because, again, for the last several decades and generations of doctors in medical science have viewed the heart from the physical-only perspective as nothing more than a biological blood pump. But if you go back into human history, different levels of civilization, you'll see the heart plays a far more fundamental role than a biological blood pump. We talk about, the heart of a nation, having the heart of a lion, having love and truth, or the heart of the matter. There's got to be more to it than that. And so, 20, 30 years ago, a bunch of cardio scientists and cardio neurologists from Harvard and Stanford and Cornell and got together to form an institute called HeartMath because they wanted to explore this. And they discovered something very interesting which our ancestors have known for a long time. Guess what? The heart is more than a biological blood pump. It has such a role to play. In fact, the heart has its own brain with about 50,000 neurons. And that brain emanates an electromagnetic signal that influences and dominates the head brain. You measure the heart brain with an electrocardiogram, and the signals given off are 5,000 more times more powerful than the signals you'll measure with an electroencephalogram on the brain. And as a result of that, they started to notice that when the heart tells the brain which frequency to go into, and the brain corresponds, you have an entrainment that leads to a coherence in the body where it's very difficult to age, where you have an intuitive sense of what's right and wrong, where you open the right doors, make the right decisions, and life starts to flow. But what happens? Traditional education, which came out of 19th century post-industrial revolution, which was designed to teach a population how to follow orders and be a cog in the machine, which was good at the time, so you didn't chop your arm off in a new machine, and you showed up on time and we could build the world with these new machines. That's traditional education. It's still the same. It works on the left brain. So now all of a sudden we think, oh no, what makes more sense? What's more logical? Let's run a SWOT analysis. Let's balance the spreadsheet equation. Oh, I'm going to choose this one, even though, my heart's telling me something. I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to lead with the brain's decision. And then you have what's called incoherence. Stress levels automatically rise, causing all sorts of different problems on a continuous basis, on a chronic basis. And people that follow their head, not their heart, classic example. Well, I married her because she ticked every box. Right? Oh, really? How's that working out for you 5 years down the line? Right? Oh, well, no, it was no. I married because I knew this was the woman from the moment I set eyes on her. And my heart jumped up and says, boom, bingo, done. Right? I don't look at it logically on a spreadsheet. It's who I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. Now, previously, in, let's say, pre-20th century marriage, that was actually the prerequisite because we had far more survival going on. marriage was designed to unite villages, end tribal feuds, or match skill sets and for economic or political gain or survival. That was the role of marriage pre-20th century. Romantic love didn't come into it. If you followed your heart, you're an idiot. You'd be put in jail or committed to an asylum for talking about this romantic love thing. No, we need a blacksmith in the family. They need a seamstress. You guys are getting married. Done. So, but in today it's different. Today we've evolved out of that need for survival, that base need of survival, this Darwinian imposition where we think, oh, survival of the fittest, I've got to be better, otherwise I'm going to be taken out of the food chain. No, you were born perfect and you were born for a reason. And in today's society, we're so grateful to be born into this time in history where we can follow our heart and know that we're not going to starve to death. Yeah?
That's lovely, that's lovely. You're basically saying if you really want to discover why we are here and what the purpose of the higher purpose of our existence is, and if we want to develop our potential as an individual, as a global community, we have to follow and listen to our hearts.
Absolutely. The problem is if you're working from a base physical reality, and you're dealing with science and biology and medical stuff that only focuses on what they perceive to be physical reality and ignoring the metaphysical, then how do you quantify that? You can't. So what do? They ignore it because it threatens their paradigm. Right? Whereas every person who experiences the passion of following their heart will tell you the magic, and you just won't be able to put it as a line item on a spreadsheet. But what's real? What's real is what we experience as real. As I said, the only thing as humans we can experience is the fact, the act of experiencing. So why would you not base your fundamental reality at that level, which is metaphysical, rather than physical, and hopefully, go to school, get a good grade, get a job I don't like so that I can earn enough money to feel certain so that I can retire at 65, usually within a degenerative disease within 2 years, and then pass away wondering what happened. Not this side of the table. I wouldn't wish that on anyone else.
What you actually just mentioned about the Heart Math Institute became actually kind of sub-specialty in medical science called neurocardiology. Neurocardiology. And in fact, it's very impressive. Actually, we get more information going from the heart to the brain, which has been shown. And
absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, I think that's teaching us. Actually, rocket science here is telling that there's another component to our existence, which is kind of contradiction because rocket science actually tries to confirm itself and to support its paradigm. What is it? I wanted to ask another question. We have discussed a lot of things, and we just take it as one of the last questions now. Well, you as an entrepreneur have built up different companies, 25, 30, something like that, and you have had success, you have had failures, that's part of the journey. Now, what would you recommend to medical institutions? How to run medical institutions? Do you have some recommendations on what this framework could be when we deal with...
Putting me on the spot there. I've never ran a medical institution, but I'm a keen observer as to what kind of organizations work and what don't. And again, come back to some of the principles we've covered. You've got a collective cooperation towards a higher level of purpose rather than individual expressions that self-serve. Most medical institutions that I've observed, and I'm sure you have as well, it's politics that govern far more than an objective, compassionate intention to serve the greater good. Again, it's the individual cell in the body going haywire, rather than caring about the overall organism. So to run a medical institution, the first thing one has to do is attract people that have a certain level of awareness that they're really here to help serve. Again, you take a classic, and I'll say it openly, especially here in Switzerland, dysfunctional organization, the United Nations. The premise the United Nations was set up on was a valid premise. How can we bind together in unity so that we don't have more war, so that we do operate more functionally? And a hospital, or a doctor's institution. How do we get together to help serve and treat people of diseases? The premise, the fundamental organizing principles were sound and solid, but unfortunately, what is the United Nations? It isn't that. It is not a combined unit that has international interests at heart. No, it is a collective unit of national interests, each fighting for their own agenda and their own sense of self-significance, ego, and principles. Right? You take a modern medical institution that has the same parallel. And again, or educational institutions. For many years I sat on the board of one of the top business schools here in Europe. And what I noticed was that in that institution, it was far more about the politics, about looking good for donors, about fitting the right pictures, about how many publications I can appear in so that I can get a better shot at tenure, so that I can have more certainty about my position. Had nothing to do with how do we serve the students? How do we create students that become better than our current role of teachers? Oh no, heaven forbid that. I'm a teacher, I'm more significant. My role is to tell you what you should and shouldn't know, rather than have an awareness of growing you into something that can hopefully stand on my shoulders, but go to reach higher because of that. And so as a medical institution right now, it starts again, not at the physical level, not about what pieces of paper you've got on the wall. Of course, you need certain skill sets, but it's the mental, emotional side about, are you coming from egocentrism or ethnocentrism, ultimately up to your core fundamental driving principles based upon love and contribution and cooperation, or self-serving, what can I get for me? And if we start to make that transition, I really think we can make the world a much better place.
It needs courage to live one's life and to follow one's path and to develop one's individual potential. It needs a brave heart. Huh?
That's the hero's journey.
That's the hero's journey.
That's why we're here. Are we here to hide out and play small and hope nobody discovers us? It's like, I was talking to somebody the other day and said, well, I'm just shy. I'm like, well, what do you think shy is? So, well, no, I'm just shy. No, you're not just shy. You raised your hand at some point, or you said something and somebody shot you down, and you associated so much pain to that you didn't want to do it again, and now you call yourself the label of shy. Shy is simply, please don't let you discover me. That's shy. And it's about getting back in the game and understanding that you were born perfect, you were born magnificent, you were born with everything you needed to be. You were dealt a hand of cards that's different to everybody else's. Go play that hand. Don't bitch and complain the fact you don't have a full house. And that's an illusion. My life isn't smooth sailing and roses. I have more challenge in my life than most people would ever want, but I embrace that because I want life to give me the weight belt so I can swim harder and learn more. And once I've mastered that, put more weight on. That's what I want. I want to finish this life totally worn out, spent, without one other breath in me. And if there was one breath, I'd want it to say, wow, thank you. That was a game worth playing. Not like, oh, I've got to the end and I managed to collect more money than everybody else and I've won that game, only to realize that nobody was actually playing that particular game. Or, oh, I managed to make it through safely without any of the excitement and the adrenaline. See, life is a movie. And a good movie has drama and sadness and comedy and romance and challenge and upset. And you want to walk out of a cinema having seen the movie of your life, completely emotionally spent at every level. That is a movie you go and see again. Not something that was boring because the main protagonist didn't really have much to do and played it safe. You don't want to go and spend good money watching James Bond for 90 minutes rescue a kitten out of a tree. That isn't the life you want to live. That's not the movie you want to star in. No. Go play the game. Go swing the bat. And that for me is the life that I want to play.
Thank you very much, Peter. It was very exciting. It's great to have you here. Thank you for this interview. I just want to say that the way we got in touch with Peter was that we sent an email and then a video message, and he was so kind to respond. And it's fantastic to see that you're accessible. We can get in touch with you, and I think there is a lot to learn. You're dedicated to what you're doing. There is, it's really, I have the feeling it's not very very mind-oriented. It's really coming from a place which is beyond the mind, and that's very powerful. I could feel that in the conversation we had when we had breakfast. I can feel it now, and I think that's what the generation, younger generations, need to discover and to have confidence and faith too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Klaus. The work you're doing is pioneering. You know, the world needs more people like you, and that's why I know it took us a while because my schedule is pretty crazy. But you know, I did want to come and support your work. I did want to come and add some value if I could, and say thank you. You've been kind enough to invite me out and give me a great experience here in Switzerland. And the least I could do was come and share some of my philosophy, hopefully to be able to help some of the people that are watching here through the medium that you're putting on. Thank you.